About 2 days ago, I was walking up the steps of the Capitol when Representative Yoho suddenly turned a corner, and he was accompanied by Representative Roger Williams, and accosted me on the steps right here in front of our nation's Capitol. I was minding my own business, walking up the steps, and Representative Yoho put his finger in my face. He called me disgusting. He called me crazy. He called me out of my mind. And he called me dangerous. And then he took a few more steps, and after I had recognized his comments as rude, he walked away and said, "I'm rude. You're calling me rude." I took a few steps ahead, and I walked inside and cast my vote, because my constituents send me here each and every day to fight for them and to make sure that they are able to keep a roof over their head, that they're able to feed their families, and that they're able to carry their lives with dignity. I walked back out, and there were reporters in the front of the Capitol, and in front of reporters, Representative Yoho called me, and I quote, "a fucking bitch." These are the words that Representative Yoho levied against a congresswoman, the congresswoman that not only represents New York's 14th congressional district, but every congresswoman and every woman in this country, because all of us have had to deal with this in some form, some way, some shape, at some point in our lives. And I want to be clear that Representative Yoho's comments were not deeply hurtful or piercing to me, because I have worked a working class job. I have waited tables in restaurants. I have ridden the subway. I have walked the streets in New York City. And this kind of language is not new. I have encountered words uttered by Mr. Yoho and men uttering the same words as Mr. Yoho while I was being harassed in restaurants. I have tossed men out of bars that have used language like Mr. Yoho's. And I have encountered this type of harassment riding the subway in New York City. This is not new. And that is the problem. Mr. Yoho was not alone. He was walking shoulder to shoulder with Representative Roger Williams. And that's when we start to see that this issue is not about one incident. It is cultural. It is a culture of lack of impunity, of accepting of violence and violent language against women, and an entire structure of power that supports that. Because not only have I been spoken to disrespectfully, particularly by members of the Republican Party and elected officials in the Republican Party, not just here, but the President of the United States last year told me to go home to another country, with the implication that I don't even belong in America. I honestly thought that I was just going to pack it up and go home. It's just another day, right? But then yesterday, Representative Yoho decided to come to the floor of the House of Representatives and make excuses for his behavior. And that I could not let go. I could not allow my nieces, I could not allow the little girls that I go home to, I could not allow victims of verbal abuse and worse to see that excuse, and to see our Congress accept it as legitimate and accept it as an apology, and to accept silence as a form of acceptance. I could not allow that to stand, which is why I'm rising today to raise this point of personal privilege. And I do not need Representative Yoho to apologize to me. Clearly, he does not want to. Clearly, when given the opportunity, he will not. And I will not stay up late at night waiting for an apology from a man who has no remorse over calling women and using abusive language towards women. But what I do have issue with is using women, our wives and daughters, as shields and excuses for poor behavior. Mr. Yoho mentioned that he has a wife and 2 daughters. I am 2 years younger than Mr. Yoho's youngest daughter. I am someone's daughter too. My father, thankfully, is not alive to see how Mr. Yoho treated his daughter. My mother got to see Mr. Yoho's disrespect on the floor of this house towards me on television. And I am here because I have to show my parents that I am their daughter and that they did not raise me to accept abuse from men.
Let me just say first and foremost, good on AOC. Good on her for saying the words out loud. Good on her for making him squirm and not letting him get away with it. Consider too that while cursing is pretty commonplace now with the rise of Trumpism and the total destruction of decency on the right, only a few years ago, cursing could end political careers. Using a swear word on the House floor would likely get stricken from the record. And so knowing this, for AOC to use the exact words that she uses here shows that A, she's not scared, and B, she knows that any blowback would have only proven her point. It's inappropriate? Yeah, you're right, it is inappropriate. So take that up with Republican Representative Yoho, who decided to casually lob it to not only another person, but a United States Congresswoman. By the way, this all came in response to this quote-unquote apology by the Florida Republican.
Mr. Speaker, I stand before you this morning to address the strife I injected into the already contentious Congress. I have worked with many members in this chamber over the past 4 terms, members on both sides of the aisle, and each of you know that I'm a man of my word. So let me take a moment to address this body. I rise to apologize for the abrupt manner of the conversation I had with my colleague from New York. It is true that we disagree on policies and visions for America, but that does not mean we should be disrespectful. Having been married for 45 years with 2 daughters, I'm very cognizant of my language. The offensive name-calling words attributed to me by the press were never spoken to my colleagues, and if they were construed that way, I apologize for their misunderstanding. As my colleagues know, I'm passionate about those affected by poverty. My wife Carolyn and I started out together at the age of 19 with nothing. We did odd jobs, and we were on food stamps. I know the face of poverty, and for a time it was mine. That is why I know people in this country can still, with all its faults, rise up and succeed and not be encouraged to break the law. I will commit to each of you that I will conduct myself from a place of passion and understanding, that policy and political disagreement be vigorously debated with the knowledge that we approach the problems facing our nation with the betterment of the country in mind and the people we serve. I cannot apologize for my passion or for loving my God, my family, and my country. I yield back.
Gotta love an apology where the person meanders on for several minutes, absolving themselves of their own wrongdoing before just outright saying that they will not apologize. Yoho claims here that he knows the face of poverty, but having known poverty isn't licensed to talk down to people, and the fact that he did shows that humility plays zero role in his life. In other words, trying to play the poverty card is an empty stunt that proves that he learned no valuable lessons from his ascent out of poverty. He's just as entitled as every other guy born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Every other guy who talks down to women in full view of the public because he thinks he's untouchable. He also says that he won't apologize for his, quote, passion. He cursed AOC out. That's not passion, it's misogyny, it's bigotry, and it's dehumanizing, which has become a staple in the modern Republican Party. It's not a bug, it's a feature. You can't claim that the GOP isn't steeped in bigotry when their leader, Donald Trump, has predicated his entire presidency on it. He launched his campaign on the promise of a Muslim ban and on building a wall to keep immigrants out from Mexico. He fomented violence against Asian Americans at the beginning of the coronavirus outbreak, and now, in his desperation to distract from his response to it, he's putting on full display his opposition to Black Lives Matter by vocally siding with police over protesters. And time again, the GOP is silent. And increasingly, they join in. And that was put on full display with Ted Yoho's attacks on the Congresswoman. This isn't about one person's actions, and it's not happening in a vacuum. This is the culmination of years and years of institutionalized bigotry by insecure little men who never learned how to take responsibility for their own actions. And so the only way they'll learn is by moments like this, where people like AOC stand up on the House floor and dress them down in front of the entire nation until they're left humiliated. It's because she's able to do that, and to do it so effectively, that Republicans hate her. It's not because she's any of the things they claim she is, it's that they're scared of her. It's that she's able to call them out. It's that they can't continue to act out with impunity unless they want to be humiliated. And they know they'll be humiliated. I can promise you that no other lawmaker is going to try and curse her out now, and that's a testament to just how effective she was on the House floor today. And don't forget to listen to my podcast, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, where I'll take a deep dive into the biggest issues of the week and interview major players in the world of politics, like Adam Schiff, Nancy Pelosi, Beto O'Rourke, Eric Swalwell, Katie Porter, and many more. Again, that's No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen, available anywhere you listen to podcasts.